Hey everyone, Luigi Mondelli here. This is the weekly talk. In this video, I'll go over what I believe to be the number one benefit in training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This video was motivated by an email that I received from one of my great students that I admire a lot. I didn't ask him permission to share his email, so I will not share his name, and I redacted a little bit the email, but I found that it was so cool. It confirms a lot of what I think about. It is the number one benefit in training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm here to share with you guys. So if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe, share this video with your friends, and hit the notifications button. This video, of course, is all for all my students and for anybody in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappling community. I believe that we are one huge world community right now. So when I make these videos, I make thinking about my students, but also thinking about any Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner out there. So over the years, I, of course, realized there are so many benefits in training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for your mental health, your physical health, besides the injuries, of course, but in general for socialization, for, in a way to create more bonds with friends, to deal with anxiety, depression. There's so many other things. And actually, I have listed the types of people and their goals, the type of people coming across the doors of my school. And if you would like me to talk more about it, just like write a comment here below and I will go over that on my next weekly talk. And it's pretty much like a list based on everybody's goals or what people are trying to achieve when they start training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Some people just like doing that as a hobby. Some people want to become competitors. Some guys want to be teachers. Anyway, I'll go over that in my next video. But this email here made me realize even further that what I believe it is the number one benefit has, I guess, like confirmed through this guy's experience. So I'll go over this with you guys. So check this out. So his email says, I got out of work too late to make yesterday's class. My apologies. I did want to mention to you that we recently had an active shooter scenario in the building that I protect. When it's really going down, how our bodies react is amazing. Actually, I go over a little bit about, the stress effects in your mind, in your body. You guys can check here on my playlist. I'm going to try to put the link above. But anyway, so continuing here. In this case, it was not until the end of the situation that we learned it was actually a false alarm. The speed and clarity of thought process I had during the incident was surprising. During the incident, my mind was recognizing and then solving problems with amazing speed. In work, we do not train anywhere near enough for situations like this. I attribute the speed and clarity of my thought process during this incident to the training I received at Jiu-Jitsu. When rolling, we are constantly faced with problems, pressure, and the stress of chaotic and quickly developing situations. Over time and with experience, rolling teaches us how to manage these situations. In the end, the situation at work ended up being a false alarm, but I did learn how well rolling trains us for situations in life. So I believe, and I have used the OODA loop, which is a formula created by John Boyd. And if you guys can go and research more about John Boyd's OODA loop on the internet, there's a lot of great articles and explains with more precision and more details how the OODA loop works. But anyway, the OODA loop was created, and actually is very familiar to all law enforcement in the military because it was created by a military man, so John Boyd. And the first application that was towards military service, strategy, and etc. I'll go over here, and I believe that you can apply this. I'm going to call it like in this micro timestamps to a macro timestamps. I always go over the OODA loop in self-defense and combatives workshops, in any type of training, even outside Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, actually mostly outside Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But think about this. So step number one, observe. Data collection from multiple sources. So in a macro environment or timeline, we would be thinking about collecting information from multiple sources, what is happening. You can apply this in so many different ways. In a self-defense, you would be observing like a situation as it is developing. You would be scanning for other actors, let's say, or people involved in that situation. You're going to be paying attention to your environment and so forth, so on. In a macro, when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it could be like you observing your opponents. So those will be multiple sources. Use your imagination how broad this can be. But in a macro, say in a competition environment, it could be that situation where you are watching your opponents, or pre-tournament or during the tournament, you're collecting the data, you're seeing like how everybody fights and what it's pretty much their strategy. You go to the second step, which is orient. So you filter, analyze, and enrich the information. So of course you have to apply your filters. And just going back actually to the observe, when it comes to the micro timestamp or timeline, I'm talking about you rolling with one person, right? Just like in the gym, right? So you don't have to look for multiple sources. So you are observing as you acting, as you being the feeder. Again, feeder receiver comes from the SIAC group. So I'm not stealing, I'm incorporating, I always give credit. So I have talked more about feeder and receiver type of actors in a situation. But again, this doesn't come from me, it comes from SIAC. But anyway, so as you acting in your match, you observing and you collecting the data of maybe what kind of technique your opponent is trying to apply on you. So now you apply the filters, you analyze and enrich the information. So you're seeing how you're going to counter. This is like problem solving, right? So you have in a shorter timestamp or timeline, a problem solving process, or you can have in along more time as things are developing. Actually, a OODA loop can be applied to situations that have been developing for hours, for days, for weeks, for months, for years, right? But anyway, second step, orient, filter, analyze, and enrich the information. Third, of course, is decide. Actionable insights enable best available response. So now you observe, you collect the data that you needed from multiple sources or just one source. And again, in Jiu-Jitsu, you're trying to do that in 5 to 10 minutes. So your speed, right? So your processing speed has to be super, super high. Same thing, military people, law enforcement people doing, applying the OODA loop in a CQB, CQC scenario, any kind of battle scenario, confrontation, and etc. Now you have all the filters analyzed, you're trying to perceive what the person is trying to do, what the other group is trying to do, whatever scenario is. You're applying your decisions based on your observation and in your filters, in your analysis, and now you're acting, right? So you cannot stop in any of these things. And then what you do is you execute the decision, determine if the action was correct, and start over again. So the OODA loop, again, loop, right? It's endless. It keep going, keep going, keep going. Going back here, I think that in his situation, imagine like we are rolling every day, 5 minutes, we are competing, we are going towards a competition, we are guys doing sparring, MMA, combining with jiu-jitsu, integrating into combatives, whatever. We have to be calm. We need to kind of like get a little bit inoculated against the stress. We have to desensitize ourselves a little bit so we can have more clarity of mind. We can have a better perception and a broad perception and visually, auditory perception. Our senses we have to control our stress, so we have this broader senses, right? Sensitivity to what is happening, to what is around us. So pretty much raising your situational awareness. In Jiu-Jitsu, it could be, for instance, somebody passes your guard, controls you, go to a mount position. You know what's going on. You're being controlled. What is the next step? This person going to try to go for submission. But if you control your stress level, if you can stay calm in the middle of this storm, you can orient yourself better, you can make decisions better, and you can act and you can try to apply the best defense and counters. It is every single, I have mentioned this before, every single rolling time you have, every 5 minutes to 10 minutes rolling, grappling time. And I'm recording this video specifically about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's an exercise. It's a problem-solving exercise. We all go through these 4 steps, like I mentioned before, when we are rolling. And then you should. If you're not going through that, you're just like acting by instinct or filled with emotions. We don't train, we don't fight, we don't grapple with emotions involved. We try to use only reason and logic, right? So the OODA loop, it's a very logical process. Again, it covers all the 4 steps that we go over sometimes in a second when we are training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I believe that this has translated in an, of course, more expanded way in that scenario where my dear student found himself having to observe, orient, decide, and act in that situation. I don't have the details, but I believe that probably he was already looking for who needed to be protected, who needed to be evacuated, what doors were supposed to be shut, what were the exit routes, right? Paying attention to sounds, paying attention to what was going on, analyzing all different people there, trying to scan for weapons among the crowd if was the case. But think about the observation that he had to apply and how he had to orient himself and other people, how he had to make decisions and how he had to act. Thankfully, it wasn't an active shooter scenario. But knowing that he could be calm under stress, even though he has a lot of experience, but nobody has experience enough, let's say, to find themselves in an active shooter scenario, right? Like how many times have you heard a pop or a sound or an alarm and realized this is an active shooter scenario? We train for those situations, but it's not like we go over in life those situations all the time. But in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you train your skills, you understand what I'm talking about, I hope, when I'm teaching a position. I try to go over why this is happening, why this is developing. All of a sudden, like, you're training and you find yourself more in those situations. So your pattern recognition process is definitely getting developed, right, as you rolling more, as you grappling more, as you sparring more, and etc. So anyway, I thought that this email gave me an immense sense of accomplishment as a coach, as a teacher, as somebody that has some experience going through maybe some dangerous situations where I lived, or in another job that I had. I understand the OODA loop. I teach the OODA loop. But it was amazing to receive this email and realize that something that I teach, something that that somebody created, right? The families that created, the perfect, the art, like the Gracies, the Machados, all the other families that have been part of the development of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a great thing to know that something that I learned from people with more wisdom than me have been passed to me, and then I can pass it on to other people. But anyway, I thought this would be a great weekly talk. I hope you guys enjoyed too. Send your comments, hit the subscribe button, share this with your other teammates and your friends, and read more about John Boyd's OODA loop. Thank you guys. See you next time.